Hi everyone, welcome to the next video module as part of the Summer Parker series. We're going to cover LinkedIn and personal branding and how that relates to social media and recruiting and people viewing all of your resources. So let's get started. All right, so one story I want to share before we dive into everything is from a 2016 Lisa, and you can see her quote here. Really cool story. She was not my student, but we want to feature her as something that's really awesome that can happen to you from your LinkedIn profile. So she was really into yoga, had a consulting background before Anderson, and just from using some of the tips and tricks of this class that my colleague had put together, really optimized her profile to showcase that interest. Someone viewed her profile from YogaWorks, the president of YogaWorks, after she had viewed his profile. They ended up meeting. She set up an academic internship and project work there, which actually really impressed her target company, which was Core Power Yoga. They were really impressed that she had worked with the other yoga company. One thing led to another. That's where she did her summer internship. And now, as you can see, she is the founder of FitPass Mexico. So this is just one great example, a really cool story. But every year, students tell me that because of an interaction on LinkedIn or an article or something that they saw or someone that they reached out to, something great usually came of it. So we're really trying to optimize your presence online, and LinkedIn is, of course, the main business networking site that we want to use. So we're going to give you all of the tips and tricks. All right, so here's some of what we'll be covering. We'll focus in the beginning a lot on social media and how that relates to your presence online and your job search and what people are looking for. Then we'll have a heavy focus on LinkedIn for many of the slides to optimize your profile and how your profile is interacted with by recruiters and companies. And then at the end, we'll cover a little bit of some non-traditional resume and online presence questions that have come up over the years. So yes, recruiting has become a lot more social. I think upwards of 90% of companies and recruiters are checking out social media to vet their candidates. But as you can see from the chart in green, more people, or the quality of the pool has been raised, but that also means more people are applying for jobs. Companies are able to find more people. So it's more important than ever to, again, optimize your online presence and make sure you stand out in the right ways for these companies. In terms of what the sites are being used for, this is probably not a surprise to you. Again, LinkedIn is the main search platform or online platform for posting jobs and then searching for candidates and connecting with those candidates, whereas Facebook and Twitter are more been used for company branding and applicant vetting purposes, and to see if someone, again, as part of that vetting process, is a culture fit for the firm. In terms of how you, as the job seekers, are using platforms, Facebook has been a popular way to source leads, and LinkedIn, of course. And I think the point here is really that it's a platform for you to broadcast to your network what you're looking for. That's generally the use of sites like Facebook. Let people know, let your social connections know what kind of roles you're interested in, what kind of work you've been doing, and hopefully you can even gain some company knowledge that way and gain some referrals potentially. In terms of when companies look at your social profiles, that's a question we get asked a lot. It really depends. So a lot of companies are using recruiting software to now source your links to your online profiles. They're able to get that, by the way, just through linking to a personal email like a Gmail. So even sometimes if you feel that your profile is hidden or private, they can often still source it. So make sure you check everything. And as you can see from the chart, they often look right at the beginning. It's right after receiving an application before they move on to a phone screen. And sort of best and worst case scenario here, best case scenario that we know from talking to people who work in HR is that they look you up and they see that you're connected to someone that they know. And that would be great then if that person could put in a good word for you, or they kind of ping them and say, hey, what do you know about this candidate? Oh, they worked at my past firm, they did a great job. All the way to the other end, as you can imagine, which is that they see something online, a photo or a post that is not consistent with their company values or culture, and they would then not move on with the phone screen with you. So it really can go all the way from those early stages, and then as you see, even right before an offer, where perhaps they haven't looked at your profiles, but then they conduct a background search, something happens, and they make a decision right before extending an offer. So you really have to be careful throughout the whole process. But on the other hand, not everything is negative. There are also reasons that people have been hired based on their social media. And we'll actually discuss some ways in this presentation that you can optimize for that and standing out again in the right ways. So here's just some stats. I'm sure this doesn't surprise any of you, of like reasons that people have been rejected by companies, inappropriate photos, grammar, spelling mistakes, all that kind of stuff. References to things that are not consistent again with the company's values. So we really have to be careful of what we're posting and also proofreading all of our text as well. This is a quote that one of our teaching fellows found 2 summers ago from the Wall Street Journal. Again, I doubt that this surprises anyone, but some points we do want to make here is that really, if something is online and people want to find it, they usually will. There's a lot of confusion right now about digital privacy laws. Is it state by state? Is it country level? Is it based on the company and their policies that regulates that? It's a little bit unclear. So again, don't just assume that because your settings are set to private that people can't find things. Companies we also know are reaching farther back. So they're not just doing perhaps a quick glance of what you've posted recently. They might dig far, far back in your profile. So we just want to be really careful of what kind of presence you're putting out there online. Obviously, it's easy to laugh at these kind of drunk photos, but there is a very, very strong negative reaction to drugs and alcohol in terms of recruiting. So what we recommend, and this could be especially important in business school potentially, is if you do have a drink in your hand, even if it's very innocent, you're at a networking event, something like that, we're out at a happy hour with friends, you either just put the drink behind you if you're having the photo taken that day, or if you have old posts that feature alcohol, probably best to just get rid of those. This was actually taken by a colleague of mine, Phil, at a tech conference. Obviously, you get the point here. Just be careful of what you're doing with your online presence and what's being showcased. So one of our best practices that we would recommend is to really do a whole social media cleanse. So for some of you, that could take 0 minutes if you are not online, or a couple minutes, and for some of you it could take hours. I've seen some doozies out there in terms of what's posted, and so we just want to be extra careful. Again, setting post to private or changing the audience, but honestly perhaps even just taking down those accounts while you're doing recruiting. One thing that we've mentioned is that some recruiting software can pick up anything you have, any accounts you've opened that are connected to your personal email, like a Gmail, even if all the privacy settings are on and things like that. So you can never be too careful when you're checking your online presence. Of course, we recommend Googling yourself, seeing what comes up, and just being extra careful. More cleansing. So this is more about background checks and drug testing and reference checks and all that kind of good stuff. We have had companies over the years in a range of formalities. Some are really big conglomerates that own lots of different companies, all the way to a small real estate company once who decided to do drug testing, background testing, all of that kind of stuff. So again, you can never be too careful on that kind of thing. So just make choices wisely while you're having fun. So I've got to get in this joke from one of my past colleagues in terms of this. I think it's pretty good. She said, "Why does Pepsi do drug testing?" Which they indeed do, to see if you do Coke. So think about that one. As I mentioned before, some companies will do drug testing, but many will also do background checks before extending the final offer, or they will give you an offer contingent upon that background check, and will also check your references as well. All right, so now LinkedIn, and again, this is going to be the main focus of our video today. Some people claimed that in the next 5 years, LinkedIn would replace the resume. Who knows? It hasn't happened yet, but it is a highly trafficked site with lots and lots of connections on it. So again, we want to make sure that you're connecting with the people that you want to be connected to, and they're seeing the things and picking up the skills that you want them to. In terms of this video, we're going to assume that you already have a basic profile set up. If you don't, just Google how to do that, and it's pretty easy. All right, so LinkedIn has over 575 million users with their site set on 3 billion. Obviously, it is the site for social networking for business, and you can see that it's really dominant in the US as well. So if that's where most of you are targeting your search, it's a really effective tool. This is just a stat again in terms of how many open jobs are. I read this about a month ago, and 90% of recruiters say that they're regularly on LinkedIn. So again, it is their main CRM tool, and we want them to find you and find you for the right roles, which is why we're going to talk all about how to set up your profiles and make sure that your settings are on to be found by those recruiters. So one question we get a lot is, when will recruiters view my profile? Often it's when they're searching, doing a specific search for candidates. So this could be based on a keyword search in your title, a certain geographic area. They might even be looking for people who work at certain companies. So if you worked for a past employer, you might pop up. They'll often try to connect with you or search for you after meeting you at a networking event. When we used to be in person, this might have been if you exchanged business cards or exchanged emails. And then often they'll look for you prior to an interview. So all of this is to say that if you do have LinkedIn Premium or can see who's viewing your profile, it's a good thing if someone is viewing your profile. It usually means they're interested, or they're trying to vet you for a role, or do some research on you before an interview. Also, LinkedIn will often get seen in a Google search. It's often the top hit for most of us. So this was mine. Indeed, it was. So again, we just want to make sure that it is something you're proud of, since it's going to be showing up a lot. This is a quick note as we start to make a ton of changes to your profile. I don't think it's as important as it used to be. We used to notice that if you didn't have your activity broadcast set off, every time you made any change, it notified your network. So if you added a skill or changed any little small thing, and when I actually went to pull this screenshot, I think that it is not quite that granular anymore. It sounds like you can make changes to things like whether people see your work anniversaries or an education change or a new job. So you can still take a look at that. If you look at what I clicked on there, my profile, settings and privacy, they now again have the UI organized a little bit differently so that you can pick which category of sort of settings and privacy you want to work on, and then it has associated prompts next to it. So just take a look and scroll through that and make sure that those are comfortable for you in terms of what's showing. This is a recruiter's view. Again, the screenshot might be a little bit outdated, but it shows you what they view when they're on LinkedIn. And you can see first that they automatically filter who is selected they are open to opportunities. So we want to make sure that we have that selected, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then they also want to see if you have any connections to people at their company. So even more reason to expand your network and make sure that you're adding lots of new people as you're starting your journey at Andersen. All right, so back to that filtering on people who are open. This is under job seeking preferences. And I believe that was, again, settings and privacy. And then you would say, let recruiters know you're open to opportunities. This is a private setting. So your current employer or something like that cannot see that you've selected this. So you're sort of in stealth mode with this. So I would recommend to all of you that you put that you are open to new opportunities because, again, in terms of optimizing where you are in the search results with recruiters. Also, keywords is a big way. Key target words is a way that their filters come back to them in terms of search results. So we want to make sure that you're ranking highly on that. And it's often, again, getting the right skill set or keyword title to come back to them for the roles that they're looking for. So with that in mind, let's get to optimizing your profiles. All right, so title is the most basic one. Again, this would be a good time in the video to pull up your LinkedIn profile and make sure that you can make some of these changes in real time as we're going through it. So title is pretty basic. I've given you some examples here. Many will opt for just the MBA candidate at UCLA Andersen. I think we actually have MBA candidate at Andersen. We just don't want to have the School of Management. It makes it too long. It might make it run onto 2 lines. Some people, as you can see, have used that vertical line to add a specialty or a concentration after it. I think that's nice. Again, it really shows what you're looking for right up there at the top. Some of you will put your class year in there to call attention to that, and that's great too. We saw one once that just said hi in the title, and yes, it grabbed our attention, but wasn't super professional, so I wouldn't recommend doing that for MBA recruiting, but you get the basic idea. And again, this is to make you stand out. We did a search here of MICH, Michelle, a lot of Michelles, Michaels, that kind of thing. And we just want to make it really clear if someone is skimming it quickly, who the candidate is at Andersen, what year you are in your MBA, all that good stuff. Now we're going to talk all about LinkedIn photos, which are really important. Obviously, we have Kim Kardashian, the selfie queen herself right here, but LinkedIn has said that profiles with a picture are 21 times more likely to get viewed, 9 times more likely to get a connection request, and 36 more times likely to receive a message. And that's, again, data straight from LinkedIn a few years ago. So we want to make sure that it's a professional photo, it's flattering, and it's something that you're comfortable with and that represents you now. We've had some issues in the past where someone has put up a photo and they no longer look that way, big drastic change in hair color or something like that. So we just want to make sure that it's some way that they could recognize you if they saw you, let's say, on a virtual recruiting event this fall. All right, so photo, industry, and geography kind of go together. Here's a picture of one of our Parker TAs, Jane. She, as you can see, has her area listed as New York City. That's where she did her internship this past summer, or she might have stayed in LA, given that it was working remote, I'm not sure, but that's her geographic area of focus. She was at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and again, that this works for those of you who are recruiting in other geographies besides Los Angeles. There are some studies and some articles that have shown recruiters are really biased for the regions that they're in. Tech used to have this idea in terms of people already being in San Francisco or on the West Coast. And so if you are torn between multiple geographies, we recommend just putting LA because that's where you're going to school now, or virtually that's where the school is located for you this year. So Los Angeles is a safe one, but if you do have a specific area you're recruiting for, you can put that as well. Industry, we wouldn't worry too much about. This is actually a drop-down selection, and it no longer shows up on the main page of your profile, so don't worry too much about that. And if you're not sure what to choose, and again, this would just be for search results, if people were looking at you as a candidate, you can go to some companies that interest you on their page on LinkedIn and see what they are listed as. So Google, for example, is classified as internet as the industry. So you can just play around with that and click on a few companies. I believe we've mentioned this before, but it's important to add a vanity URL. It helps in terms of SEO, and also all those random numbers and letters at the end make it look a little bit cluttered. So if you don't already have this, I think many of you do, this is how you would change to a vanity URL. You go to the little pencil icon. You then go to another pencil icon about profile URL, email, that kind of stuff. Then this is what I already had for mine, but you can just click on that little pop-out button and then edit your custom URL. And you can pick, as long as it's not already taken by someone, any combination of your name. If your name is already taken at the end, if you have a more common name, you can add your class year or your undergrad graduation, your birth year, anything like that, so that it's recognizable to you. We also want to really make it easy for people to contact you via the site, whether that's messaging on LinkedIn, but also potentially having your personal email, like your Gmail or your Anderson email. So this is, again, something you would change in settings in privacy, and you can control what people see, either people you're not connected with, people that are your first degree connections, and all of that. We've even seen people put their Gmail right in the summary of their LinkedIn statement if they really want anyone to be able to contact them. So it's up to you, but just again, make sure you're optimizing for what you're comfortable with. And then after you make those changes, make sure that it's appearing that way on the page, the way you'd like. Most students will choose to add a background photo or a banner photo, which was a feature that was released a couple years ago to, again, help with personal branding. Many people choose Anderson, as Singh did here. And you can also thank him when you see him, if you ever see him in class, on a Zoom, or in another virtual setting. Singh and Regina were the ones who set up all of those small groups for your Parker groups this summer. So he took a huge spreadsheet, is amazing with all of that, and was looking at time zones. Many of you are in different time zones, size of the groups, preference of when you had accounting, and all that stuff. So we owe a big thank you to Singh. So if you ever meet him, tell him thanks. Here's some other background photos that I've enjoyed over the years. There's many, many examples. These were some of my advisees. You can put, again, the city that you're targeting jobs in. You can put something that's more personal to you, like Robbie did with mountain climbing. It is, again, another great tool for personal branding to try to get noticed by companies and groups that interest you. You can also put your hometown as well. So you would change this, again, pretty self-explanatory. There's a little photo icon up there in the banner, add a background, and then you can upload a photo. The summary statements are pretty important. Get a lot of questions every year about this. Generally, we want to keep it brief, and it's a restatement of your value proposition that should be reflected in your resumes and cover letters as well. Again, I'm a really big fan of concise summaries. More and more people are looking at LinkedIn on mobile, so we want to really optimize for a mobile view as well. And we want to mention the main skills that you want to be known for and your target industry and function. So here's an example from Ariana, an upcoming Parker TA that's actually already running some small groups with your class. And she was transitioning from actually having a law degree and practicing law to working in affordable housing. So she really did a great job, I think, of showcasing her experience and how she already had that interest coming into Anderson and showing that she's passionate about that. Here's an example from another one of our Parker TAs, David. One thing I really like that he did here, as you can see, is he included his workplace Big Five results. It shows his sense of humor when you get to know him, and I think it's something that made him stand out. And then the last one is from a recent grad, a 2020 grad, Adam. He's targeting roles in tech and entertainment. And what I think is great is that he's already updated it to include some of the work he's done since coming to Anderson. Again, we really want to optimize that people are reading what's most important at the top. If they just had one or 2 seconds to skim your profile on the mobile app. So he's put right up in the summary some of the best things that he's been able to work on since pursuing entertainment here in Los Angeles. Also, especially for those of you who are looking to go into marketing roles or product roles, it's really great to take advantage of this dynamic content that you can do by uploading photos or linking to articles or linking to videos. This is an example from Bhavna, who now actually runs the Social Impact Center on campus. And when she was a student here back in 2012, 2013, 2014, she was responsible for a lot of the TED Talks that were happening on campus, sort of our version of the TED Talks, the Campfire Talks. So as you can see, there's some pictures linking there. And it really has just helped her build her brand and curate and showcase all these amazing events that she was involved with in terms of impact, which has really led to the foundation of what she's doing now at Anderson. As I mentioned, dynamic content, it's a great way to make LinkedIn, which can seem a little bit static. We don't want it to get too text heavy, more visual. And so again, 2 examples from 2 of our Parker TAs, Emily and Jerry. Emily has had a big professional and personal interest in yoga, so she's actually linking to her website. And then Jerry has a screenshot from one of the projects he's working on this summer. And I think we'll be hard pressed to find someone with a cooler intern title than him in terms of what he's working on. So pretty awesome. In terms of how you do that, pretty self-explanatory. You just go to edit that experience, and then you can upload, share links, upload pictures, etc. All right, so now kind of moving down, we've got the banner photo, the picture, the summary. When you're actually trying to describe what you've done, big question is, can I use bullet points? And I know you're working really hard on those SAR statements for your resume, but we don't want you to just copy and paste from the resume into LinkedIn. Couple reasons. One, it would be redundant, right? So if a recruiter or an alum does take the time to actually read all of your materials, if they've just read the same thing on the resume and LinkedIn, it's going to seem repetitive, but also, again, more. It's just that we want it to be a little bit more high level, a little bit more concise and more conversational. So instead, what I would do is just write a few lines, high level lines to describe your role, in the same way that you would for the tell me about yourself question, or if you were meeting someone at a recruiting event or in an interview for the first time. It should be conversational, speaking first person. A lot of use of I is helpful. I did this, I was responsible for this. And then I also get asked, should I use a lot of numbers and metrics? I would say no. I err on, again, the more high level side. You can certainly mention the impact that you had at your firms, but I would avoid very specific numbers, like I reduced costs by 33%. It seems a little bit too granular for LinkedIn. And again, we're hoping to optimize for someone quickly reading a description of this and getting a sense of what kind of skills you have and what responsibilities you had. So save those numbers and metrics and percentages for the resume. As I mentioned, over half of the access to LinkedIn is on mobile. I think that number has even gone up in the past few years. So this is even more reason to stay concise, keep things very visually appealing, again, adding that dynamic content and trying to stand out in that way and less text heavy on what's in your profile. More on sort of those role descriptions and how people have handled them. So this is an example from Jane, a rising second year. Hers is very succinct, as you can see, which works really well for finance. That's often a good method for finance professionals to keep it simple and keep it brief. And she's actually interning at Amgen this summer in their finance and strategy leadership program. There's an example, a little bit of a contrasting example from Julie. She was a 2019 grad, and she was targeting roles at startups, especially in technology, but also mid-sized tech companies. As you can see, if you read hers is a little bit more conversational, which I think works again for the roles and companies that she was going for. Another great tip to keep things concise is that you can collapse different roles. So if you were promoted several times like Pam was, you can just put that as one line, and you don't need to put a separate entry for each role you had at the firm. Typos and grammar, right? We really want to avoid this in the same way we do on cover letters and resumes. Hopefully in the fall, we're going to be relaunching our Parker proofreading service where you can submit your materials to our undergrad work studies, and they will actually review them for you to check for typos and grammar. Not so much content, that would be things you want to work with your Parker advisor on, but you can always send them a screenshot or send them a link to your LinkedIn profile and have them take a look. All right, so any Napoleon Dynamite movie fans out there, hopefully you'll get a laugh from this, but skills are really important. LinkedIn actually has data that shows members on their site with 5 or more skills are contacted up to 33 times more by recruiters and are 17 times more likely to have their profile viewed. So the skills matter, and let's take a look now at how to optimize what skills you have. All right, so again, a great way to optimize yourself in LinkedIn searches is to make sure you have the right skills or the ideal skills for the industries and functions you're going for. One resource that I think would be great to help you with this if you are making a pivot and you're new to this industry or function is back to the good old Parker portal. If you go to your industry, let's say I picked marketing here that you're interested in, and go to the ebook there, one of the sections in the ebook, they're usually towards the back, the end of the PDFs, is the jargon for that industry. So every year we ask second years and our ACT coaches and the Parker advisors to update this. And so it should give you a pretty good sense of some of the jargon that people are using in that industry or function. So here's an example of a former Parker TA, Abby Williamson. And she, of course, has listed 3 that are perfect for her roles in entertainment. She's got entertainment listed as a skill. She actually had worked in entertainment before Anderson, so that helped a little bit. Marketing and project management. So take a few minutes right now to add any relevant skills to your profile, and then you can have your contacts endorse you for those skills. And of course, we want more endorsements for the skills that matter most to the roles that you're going after. The max, the last time I checked, that you can have is 50. And surprisingly, the average is 49. I certainly don't have 49 skills listed on there, but again, if we are trying to optimize for recruiter searches, it helps to have a lot of skills, and we'll show you actually next how you can reorder them. So we want the top skills to appear at the top. Again, this is what we want people to see, and we want the visual depiction to match that. So you can click on this little pencil tool again, and hover over the skills and then kind of drag them into the order, drag and drop into the order you want. Again, to increase the endorsements, you can ask your friends to endorse you for a particular skill. Just send them an email and let them know which skills you'd like to be endorsed for, and then you can return the favor to them as well. Recruiters don't really look at who endorsed you for what, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. I heard someone once was like, well, my mom endorsed me for that. They're not going to know it's your mom, so don't worry too much about that. But I think you can even edit or remove endorsements if you want to. So yes, reordering the skills, we just talked about that. What were the hottest skills according to LinkedIn in 2020? So on the soft skill side, we have emotional intelligence made the list for the first time. This doesn't surprise me. I think that firms are gravitating towards talent with more interpersonal skills and people-oriented skills. And then on the hard skill side, analytical reasoning, I think, was up a couple spots. And then business analysis as well was plus 10. So this is really great for MBAs in terms of, we have a quote here, data-driven kind of skills. But of course, the sweet spot is having the combination of the hard and soft skills. Most overused word on LinkedIn, motivated. So again, this is kind of like the word passionate. Sometimes there's a place for it, but in general, when you're writing the summary statements or describing past roles, it's a little bit cliche. I see it a lot to see like motivated business professional, passionate business professional. We want to think of a more specific way to express that passion and drive in your past roles. In terms of recommendations, this is a little bit different than endorsements. So this is where someone would actually, someone you've worked with, worked for, or they worked for you, would actually write up a little summary statement on LinkedIn, and you can see recommendations that have been given to you and those you've given to other people. So I think they're a great way to showcase, again, some of those EQ, interpersonal skills, that you can work with people and get along with them. If you're interested in contacting someone, you can just reach out to them and let them know that you're working on your LinkedIn profile for Andersen, asking if they'd be comfortable writing you a brief recommendation. And then kind of like any letter of recommendation, it can also help if you give them some ideas. So you could almost kind of write it for them a little bit and show them like, this is kind of what I was thinking, or is this something you'd be comfortable endorsing me for the skills that I've listed? So here's a screenshot from Kevin. He is the new Marketing Association president. Doesn't surprise me, coming from sales, in which he worked in, and the kind of guy he is, that he has given recommendations, he's received them. It really, again, just speaks to that EQ, emotional intelligence. It shows quickly to me, if I was skimming his profile, that Kevin is someone that was well liked at his past job and would probably be easy to get along with. In terms of adding a profile section beyond the basic building blocks, again, this is something that we've had a past student do, Andrew. You can see he actually had quite a few publications, which is really impressive. So he added that. People have added things for patents, awards, that kind of stuff. So you just go, as I've shown you through my profile, to add a profile section, and then you can add what you would like. You can also reorder the section, so you can leave it in the default way. Education is one that I just wanted to mention. Sometimes education ends up getting really buried towards the bottom, depending on the number of roles you've had. And this has happened to me before. I'm often scrolling way down to see when an Andersen alum, what year they graduated. So we want to just, again, take a visual look at it and reorder it if it makes sense to you, to have more pertinent information towards the top. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit more generally about your social network and social connections, and again, how that can help you with recruiting. So some of you may have heard of loose networks, weak ties. There's been a lot of academic research on this subject, and it really comes down to a couple things. One is that, yes, strong ties are the most invested in you, but if you think about it, many of those people, family, close friends, are not really sure exactly what you do. Like if you asked your parents, your grandparents, your friends to tell you exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis at your job, they might not know. So this is really more evidence to clearly and concisely help those people understand what you do. But as we're alluding to, it actually speaks to the power of these loose secondary connections, right? And studies have shown that most jobs and career introductions actually happen from the weak ties, the secondary network. And so if you think about connecting with new classmates from Andersen, connecting with their friends, seeing these connections build on LinkedIn, this is really strong evidence that this is actually probably how you're going to find your next opportunity. Just going back to that as well, if you think about it, the first degree connections, those really strong ties, often kind of run in the same circles as you. Maybe the same kind of jobs, the same industry, you think the same way, kind of the group think, you read the same news. And so those secondary ties and loose connections are really the ones that introduce you to new circles as well. New networks, new industries, new functions. So even more reason to have your next opportunity come from those when a lot of you are pivoting in business school. So 3 ways that we can quickly do this. Adding 5 contacts on LinkedIn. If you go to the My Network little icon up there, it'll show you people you may know. I swear I don't sit around just adding people on a random Saturday night, although I have been known to do that. One thing I would tell all of you, as I tell myself, is generally it's helpful if you have met that person before. I know that this year is going to be a little bit different in terms of not meeting in person, but have had a quick Zoom chat with them, exchanged an email. But generally, I think when we're in the Anderson network, it's okay to just add anyone who's currently involved with the school. But it is a great way to quickly see who's in your network or who's connected to your connections, who you haven't first degree connected with. So you can add a bunch of people that way. You can also go to the alumni tools. So we have the linkedin.com/alumni, and you can look at your undergrad institution. You can look at Anderson and filter by class years and quickly see some connections come up that way. A third way that you can easily add 5 contacts is to do an email import to pull from your contacts. But as we've mentioned before, I would only recommend accepting invites from people you would be willing to make an introduction for or who are already part of the Anderson network. Although some people are what we call lions, LinkedIn open networkers, and they accept every request, it's better to assume that some people will get kind of weirded out by a random blind outreach and will only want to connect if they've actually met you or in this new world sort of connected virtually or had a conversation. Also, as we've mentioned before, it's always nice if you can add a personalized note. Although it's tempting to quickly just hit send, and I've done that before to hit the add button, it's nice to send a customized note along with your request. And it's a great opportunity to specify and reinforce how you actually met the person and suggest another opportunity to connect. Just a sentence or two is really all that's needed. And also, it doesn't really matter what category you pick of how you know this person, colleague, classmate, etc. The individual won't see what category you selected, so just go ahead and pick what makes the most sense. Another benefit to sending a personalized note is that now that person will appear in your messages in your inbox. This is a screenshot from a colleague of mine with connecting with someone that she met at a presentation she did. And I really enjoyed seeing a lot of your messages to me. So thank you to everyone who's reached out and added me on LinkedIn, and some of the really nice messages and funny messages that I've received. We are aiming to have 100 or more contacts for your LinkedIn profiles by September 13th. For some of you, again, this is already done. You've had it for many years now. And for people who are newer to the site, again, a great way is to add classmates, add staff members at Anderson, add connections from your personal network, and it should be pretty easy to get there. Also, bringing back the tracking sheet, the networking tracking sheet that we've mentioned before, this is a great thing to integrate with LinkedIn. And it really, again, is your personal CRM tool for keeping track of all these contacts and companies. And it's also a great thing to bring to your virtual advising sessions, to share this document with your advisor or your Parker TA, show them the kind of people you're interested in reaching out to. And this is a great way, again, to sort of keep track of people you're finding on LinkedIn, but want to do more specific outreach to. We also want to mention LinkedIn groups. Here are a couple screenshots of some groups. It's easy to join groups of extracurriculars you were a part of, perhaps if you played sports in college or were part of a group on campus. You can also already join the UCLA Anderson Alumni Network, even though you aren't alumni yet, which is pretty cool. And then many people choose to join the LinkedIn groups for their former employers that they've now left to come to business school. Now we're going to talk briefly about some non-traditional recruiting methods that students have used over the years using social media. So one thing, of course, that social media can do is it can give you, or can give a company a real sense of whether you would be a professional and culture fit for them. So let's take a look at some of the ways, again, students have used this in the past. If you are not currently on Twitter, consider creating an account simply for research purposes. We have two obviously very different companies here, Goldman Sachs and Mattel, and students have used both of them to either follow specific MBA recruiting handles, follow a recruiter on Twitter, or even to just research what they think people in the group that they're going to be joining are saying or posting on the site. People have used it to get a sense of what the company values, and again, what professionals working in those groups care about and what products or news they're following.
Here's an example from a grad a few years ago, Nate. He was very interested in targeting the sports industry and golf in particular. So he used Twitter to help kind of build his own personal brand and give opinions on the sports equipment in that space. Kind of helps to start a dialogue, show that he has opinions on it, that he wants to be part of that conversation. And that helped him land his internship at TaylorMade. And then he went on to work at Callaway, where he still is full-time. So during school, really use this time to think about what you want your brand to be, especially online. And you can easily tweet after seeing an interesting speaker or share a pertinent article that's relevant to your industry or function. And if you're using Twitter strategically, add your handle to the top of your resume. This can be particularly a good signaling tool if you're interested in tech or marketing. Here's one of our favorite examples of using Instagram. This was a student, Kristen, from a few years ago. She generated pretty engaging content of photos of her dog and then used Adobe Photoshop Express app to perfectly filter them and create the Instagram account. She ended up using data analytics to grow her user base to over 14,000 followers and partnered with dog companies for product placement. So as you can imagine, as a career switcher, this gave her an amazing story and a visual for her interviews, particularly with Adobe, where she spent her summer, and she worked part-time in her second year. So again, we're sort of thinking about how to wisely and professionally curate our brand online and see if that can aid you in your recruiting efforts. And another way is to just share your point of view. So you can go in and post on LinkedIn, is just one example. And in addition to providing kind of great analytics, it's also a great way to stay top of mind share within your network. Here's some funny examples of a non-traditional resume. If you click on I think we're going to link to it in the notes when you get this deck, but you can see that there was what they say 13 insanely cool examples of resumes via this Business Insider article. And then of course on the right, this was an interesting story from a few years ago, something that went viral. This person really wanted to be a product manager at Amazon. And so he built a website that looks like a product page, complete with a shopping cart and ads. And it was obviously retweeted by many big sites and got a lot of attention. So there are different creative things you can do with your background. What I would say is always consult your Parker advisor or some second-year mentors if you are in a more creative field or thinking of doing something like this and showing it to a company. We've also had students create sort of a digital portfolio or take a portfolio and make it digital and link it to some of their social media sites. So this is from Amanda Coleman from a few years ago, who's working at Apple. She was a former Parker TA and created this digital portfolio when applying to design consultancies and organizations in tech, and it helped her land an interview with IDEO. It's a nice branding tool to group together your resume, slide decks, white papers, and again, you can link to it on your resume and also upload it to your LinkedIn profile. Another great way to use social media is to post about things that have really had an impact on you. And so this is an example of Kate Edwards. She graduated in 2014. And when she was a student in the school newspaper, the student body voted on the kind of most likely to awards right before graduation. And she was voted most likely to lean in. And some of you may be familiar with Sheryl Sandberg's famous book, Lean In. And she posted about this on Facebook and was surprised when an hour later, she got this message from Sheryl Sandberg, which is pretty cool. So it's just very interesting to make sure you're sharing with your network, you know, what success has looked like for you, what you're up to at Anderson, and again, kind of stay top of mind share amongst your networks. In the past, we've had a friendly LinkedIn profile competition to kind of grant people the King and Queen of LinkedIn awards across the class, and we usually had a prize of having a lunch with your Parker advisor of choice. So we have clearly superimposed Regina's head along with Margot's head, a student from a few years ago on this picture, but the prize this year, obviously being all virtual, will be TBD, but it'll be good. So if you're interested in competing for the LinkedIn profile prize or competition, submit your profile, and then we'll have your class vote on it. So your classmates will decide who the winners are.
And before I leave you, I feel like I have to tell you this funny story. So if there's any Conan fans out there, Conan O'Brien, late night host, a couple years ago, he decided that since he would never be able to dominate platforms like Instagram, which the Kardashians already had a lock on in Facebook. He was going to go for LinkedIn. That was his jam. So he posted this hilarious profile. Some of the things you can see here, her education, he writes yes. Under test scores, he writes his blood pressure, I think. He writes skills, pretending to listen, blaming my father. And a few years ago, I think he even posted an open note on LinkedIn to the to the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, saying that the role should be his, and a whole reason why. Obviously in good fun and good humor, but I just thought that that was hilarious. So if there's any Conan fans out there, check this out. All right, that is the end of this video module. Feel free to go back and again, pause the video real time. I would recommend making these edits to your profile now. Many of them take seconds to make, and they'll really help you again in terms of optimizing yourself in the search results, making it visually something that you're proud of and that will stand out online. And if you have any questions, just let us know.